Chapter 5. Anxiety, control, and condemnation kill your curiosity. When we use only one of our intelligences, our organic instinctive intellect, why is it then so difficult to balance and live in ease with the quality we desire? Those of us who judge are those of us who do not understand. To assess is not to judge. To judge is when we personally make things being right or wrong. To say no to what we do not want is not to judge, as long as it is based on an evaluation of what is appropriate and not appropriate for us. We must always learn and seek understanding. This makes us dynamic humans who are eager for knowledge and seek answers to be able to understand and feel. So never forget your curiosity in life. If you are not curious, then you may have to check if you are stuck in something or in a certain thought form. It might be an energetic blockade you can redeem only through your curiosity and its abilities which seek renewed energy. Your consciousness, your energy, you in development, your personal evolution. Remember that everything around you is always moving and constantly changing. Day turns into night, child turns into adult, landline phones turn into 5G smartphones, summer turns into autumn. You are always and all the time part of all those change processes. The question is whether you are just unconsciously in the process and following along, whether you have put your consciousness and curiosity on the shelf to sleep. Or do you remember your curiosity about life, you, the consciousness seeking knowledge and understanding of all of the constant changes around you, so that you can keep up with your natural inborn life cycle? The combined human intelligence is the cause of any effect, resulting an action in personal and business life. What is consciousness and intelligence? Your curiosity makes you the seeking observer, a consciousness being curious to find answers which contribute to and develop your understanding ability, all your forms of intelligence. Your abilities is the understanding ability of your observations, and thus your comprehension, your capacity. Your curiosity is the tool and the language of your consciousness to develop. Your organic instincts are your formatting center, integrated in the physical genetic cell plan, your strategic operational intelligence, which is the foundation of your concrete intellect. Your dynamic intuition is your receiving center, integrated in the energetic genetic cell plan, your emotional intelligence, which is the foundation of your not concrete intellect. The brain twister. Consciousness is an observer who is responsible for the cause and effect of their own observations, which creates a kind of understanding, depending on the observer's comprehension ability of the effect of the circumstances, the surrounding energies that are the cause of the event. There is no right or wrong, only the line in between. Appropriate or not appropriate, at the moment we defend ourselves or it, stand up for ourselves to fight for a cause or feel a sense of justice, then we have judged something else to be wrong, an error, or to be right, a success. But how do we stand up for ourselves without feeling that we must fight for what we believe in and not make other people or something else the wrong thing? You see, what is an error to you, or how you understand an error or a failure, is not necessarily the same perception and understanding concept of error for me. Anyway, you may perceive an error or a fault to be wrong, in which case I would perceive an error or fault to be an opportunity. An error always requires resources, which we do not immediately and consciously see the purpose of, or do not find of any benefit to us. However, it probably does in the long run, as an error will cause us to stop and make us aware that something in the system we are interacting in does not function, is not sustained or quality-based and balanced. Maybe I am doing you a favor by pointing out that you have made a mistake, and the effect of my action will be the cause of your thinking about it and finding the way which is yours, and thus I put myself back on track. Or I have developed myself further, and this kind of error no longer benefits me. There are many ways of looking at criticism. If, for example, you would do a task for me several times and would make the same mistake, in the end it is about maybe you having to find something else to work with, which you are not yet conscious about. You may have lost interest, or the job has simply become too big or too difficult. This may require that I must fire you, and then you would perceive it as a huge criticism, as you wish to get the possibility to correct the mistake. As I'm very fond of you personally, it would be a hard critical action to fire you. But then I would set you free to think in other ways, to be able to find new ways. I shall then find another one who can better carry out the task, as the task has continuously been changed over time and is now more difficult. I will thus get back on track. Here we shall need our emotional intelligence, EQ, combined with our operational intelligence, IQ, to be able to understand and navigate with all of the emotions, their effect to the other party and ourselves. Thereby, the need each of us has in the given situation. It is not certain that you understand my intention, the cause, which is to set you free, the effect, both of us from an inappropriate situation, as you are stuck in the feeling of failure and only see the criticism. There is a demand for confirmation in you, which is bigger than the demand for being united in an agreement, for getting a calm separation, to be able to find more appropriate conditions to live in, which is my need. Everything we do has an effect, caused by a need that comes from inside. There is no constructive criticism, only criticism. Criticism is a condition report. Only he or she who gives the criticism can decide whether it's constructive or not. Or rather, the criticism can only be constructive for the one who gives it. The receiver doesn't necessarily have the same need, comprehension ability, or understanding ability to receive it as it was originally intended. Criticism can be perceived and transformed into something beneficial, no matter what the purpose of the criticism is or was. It is up to the abilities of the receivers to receive the criticism, to find out if they are able to receive the criticism, if they can transform it into something useful for themselves, or if they throw it over their shoulder, as they take responsibility for themselves, and by this evaluate that the criticism has no place in the world, without taking it to heart, but simply moving away. If the receiver uses the criticism to criticize themselves, then we have the challenge, the resistance, the rejection, which creates chaos inside the receiver. When we interact with something, then we also take responsibility for it. This is about our ethics and morals, about the intention of the criticism. We can take responsibility only for the criticism and not the reaction which the receiver shows. Everything else is to me completely impossible. It can never be our responsibility that people react if our intention was based on a positive approach, a positive ego, for us and maybe for the counterparty. So it is not always the person giving the criticism who has the responsibility. None of us likes to be told no or to get a rejection. We shall react in one or the other way, as we may feel unappreciated by others and thus by ourselves, if we are not conscious about how to handle criticism and to transform it into something beneficial for us. Or if we simply sort it out, if we evaluate it to be of no use to us. To comprehend the understanding of consciousness, intelligence, is all about a definition of comprehension of different understand abilities. Before we can do so, it probably requires a couple of hours of therapy or life processes where we have put our old taught programs on a shelf and are ready to create our own reality based on a life-giving and healthy quality of life. This is not the reality we have brought with us per automatic through our parents, the society, religion, traditions, or cultural influences and beliefs. The reality being drawn for us when we have moved unconsciously through life. But a reality where we stand strong in ourselves, with care and empathy for ourselves and others. Where we know our boundaries and respect those of other people. A reality where we can balance with the strength inside us as a driving force, no matter what other people mean and think about us. As long as we treat and meet other people from an ethical and moral compass, from which we ourselves want to be treated. Your reaction to the external criticism depends on whether you are in a balanced place or on a way, and work with what you were made to do. Live the life you dream about and want. Or do you compromise with yourself due to, for example, anxiety, outdated thought forms, or external circumstances such as finances, cultural expectations by the family or society, religious norms, or the condemnation from your surroundings? Or do you settle for things or live with your full curiosity, showing you the way to your full potential possibilities and resources? If you just settle for things and compromise with yourself, or have not freed yourself from the influences of your circumstances through life, or have transformed it into independent self-thinking and conscious individual freedom, then all of your results will be accordingly. These will be such results that are half and probably with errors, as they are not owned just by you, but also by those people you try to live up to or have lived up to in the past. Experiences based on other people's negative influences and beliefs. You are owned by other people's attitudes, influences, and condemnation, and are thus a person without freedom. Here, I do not speak about the positive influence and interaction which we human beings may have on each other and together, but when other people's opinions and attitudes take over, and where we become slaves of other people's thought forms. When we lose our independence to be curious and make decisions based on not making mistakes or having to live up to what other people want us to do. The best way to evaluate if we are mature, independent and free-thinking people is to observe our abilities to handle criticism, whether other people are the owners of us with their confirmations or denials, or whether we are capable of making this liability assessment ourselves. The brain twister. Observations are the abilities which the consciousness or an observer has. Abilities can be developed or settled as the various energies create movements they set in motion. Depending on what kind of energies an observer originally works with and from, and depending on the way energies are being handled and used, the observer can develop themselves with balancing growth consciousness, understand abilities, thus with consequent greater perspectivation abilities, creating possibilities in their observations. Ego, negative ego, and positive ego. A child sits and plays with other children. They build a Lego castle. This is a common project, so they must learn to work together and must agree who is building what, who is helping whom and who decides when, etc. They get down to business and start building the various parts of the castle. At some point, one child gets defiant when it is the other's turn to decide, and others tell the child that he or she must do things in another way, that what the child does is wrong. The child gets angry and smashes the entire castle by kicking it to pieces, as it is unable to get what it wants, and because it doesn't like others to tell it what they are doing is wrong. This is the inborn natural ego with which we survive as infants and use to get a lot of love and attention. However, it is also the ego which helps us develop and learn to know our own and other people's boundaries. The ego we use to learn to know our own and other people's needs. It is the organic instinctive ego, which is our tool for survival when we are little ones. However, as we develop, learn, get older, get through our teenage years, then we learn a lot about love, conflicts, boundaries that come with our education, social, cultural, and maybe even religious thoughts which shape us, and thereby our positive or negative ego. At a certain time, life is, for many of us, going to force us to consciously look ourselves in the eye to define who we are, and to define our adult ego, which consists of the negative and positive ego. This can happen in, for instance, a life crisis. When other people own your thought form and are able to hit you via criticism, then your behavior is too much dependent on the negative ego, which lives and breathes only for the affirmations and recognitions or denials of others. Then we are unable to also see the solutions and the positive approach which criticism may also bring. We have no access to the thought form of our own consciousness, which we have chosen consciously, but live off of others until we actively get conscious about who we are and what our patterns are. We may lack a maturation process, the importance of which we have not yet learned, but which we are responsible for achieving. This learning shows us how to get rid of the negative ego and to replace it by the positive ego. The positive ego. It's based on good thoughts that provide good feelings and contribute to the growth of us and others. thoughts that provide us with feel-good energy and activate our inner power. Good thoughts which give us a confirmation in the form of peace and balance, with the acceptance of who we are, right where we are. The positive ego gives us a feeling of happiness and of succeeding without other people's confirmations. The feeling of success is tied to the positive ego. This is where we accept ourselves exactly as we are, with all our positive and negative poles nature has created inside us. The positive ego, which is not afraid of meeting the rejection by other people, or even rejecting someone. It is about our and other people's boundaries. It is not that criticism has anything to do with us. Maybe other people need to speak up about something we do or have, what we love about ourselves and which benefits us, but which has the opposite effect to them. The positive ego is capable of separating things and seeking to preserve the part which benefits us. The positive ego that seeks, recognizes, and chooses good thoughts like trust and faith in ourselves and our intelligence forms, develops our ability with a highly efficient navigation ability. It's the ego which is curious about new ideas and quality-based solutions for an equal and sustained result for everybody. Your new vision, philosophy's visuality with quality, creates mutuality in duality with consequent sustained consciousness. An example is when you say no to your ex-partner or your parents who have exceeded your personal boundaries. Your no has an effect by setting a limit with a rejection. This is done to take care of yourself, and then you cannot be dependent on their recognition of your decision and your need. Only a positive ego will be helpful to them and you, as you may not be able to avoid the conflict, and neither can you focus on their need for what they think is right for them. You can only relate to the limit statement you have made, and let go of your ego for their confirmation and recognition of your no. That need will be tied to your negative ego if you cannot stand up for yourself and what you believe in. Your negative ego will blur your limit statement should you become afraid of the conflict or the result of your no. If you choose to deny yourself to get their acceptance, then you do not comply with your responsibility to yourself. The negative ego. The negative ego contributes with the feeling of not being good enough based on negative thoughts. Thoughts that put us into overtime in order to live up to others or ourselves to get our need for confirmation met without any limits and without concern for what the price is for this kind of confirmation. The negative thoughts, which never contribute to growth for ourselves or other people, and which always end up with our not being able to handle challenges or criticism particularly appropriately. We reject and live in resistance because we have forgotten that we were made from both the negative and the positive poles, exactly like nature. The negative ego, where we are driven by other people's energies and inner force to be capable of feeling happiness and success, which is not sustained, or where we give too much of ourselves, our energy and inner power, to become approved by the collective consciousness. The negative ego, which exceeds the boundaries set by us and other people, as it will do anything to avoid conflicts and to get confirmations. By this we reject ourselves and possibly also other people in the process of reaching the target. When we live up to other people's expectations and negative influence, then we are missing our independent thought processes that free us from other people's opinions and attitudes, and by this manage and control our being and value. Then we lack balancing with our emotions and understanding them, so that we can define them and understand what the effect of not using our emotional intelligence might be. The consequence is that we can use only a little or some of ourselves, and that we dare not feel in order to use all of us, our entire compass with our logic and emotions in interaction. If and when we live up to other people, then we have lost our freedom to them. They own us and our thoughts, our opinions and attitudes. To have regard for other people and meet them with respect and empathy is not the same as to live up to them and forget ourselves and our curiosity for living up to who we would like to be, want to or need to be, which we cannot always feel. Then our emotions are out of balance. When one feeling is predominantly negative, a negative demand is created inside us, a demand for feeling something else as a positive opposite pole, and which we can create inside us by balancing ourselves. However, should we not succeed, then we are likely to seek fulfillment of this demand with others. If, for instance, we mostly feel failure, feel being bad at something or just being wrong, then we shall make sure to make things a success, to achieve that feeling, so that other people can approve and confirm that we are good enough. Then other people will become the driving force, instead of us being the driving force and believing in ourselves, where we meet ourselves with comprehension of our negative and positive poles which we were born with, the whole of us. Then we can enjoy the positive mutual confirmation with other people. An equal meeting, where both parties meet with respect and acceptance of the differences and a mutual confirmation, without any condemnation, expectations, or dependence arises. But what if we would now activate and understand the importance of our emotional intelligence and the cause and effect of the opposite poles, the duality theory? Then we would arrange for the confirmation inside us and balance with our feelings, as our freedom and responsibility would be more important to us than the confirmation from other people. It might be to accept mistakes we have made with the understanding that it is okay to fail, as it is part of our nature. By the acceptance that we must of course make mistakes, we shall meet this circumstance to learn, to develop. We shall be more conscious about the fact that we learned something new, and as the mistake has occurred, we shall become better and gain more experiences. When we try to restore the mistake with a positive approach and self-love, then we make other people happy and receive our confirmation from other people, which we naturally need. We shall also be happy because they are happy about what we made from the heart, and not just because they wanted it. The brain twister. Your wishes are not always the same as your purpose, dream, or life calling. We are conscious about how the mistake occurs, that it is okay to convert it into something positive inside us and use it for our development. In this process, we respect our own and other people's dissatisfaction with the mistake, But as we all know, we all make mistakes. This is part of the dualities. Everything has an opposite pole. Without that, we cannot exist or develop. Mistakes are like a system virus or when a computer fails. It shows that something does not work to its optimum. Something is outdated or just damaged. Mistakes can be used for optimization and development because they show us something for which we have the responsibility to interpret and to use appropriately. Here, I'm not talking about repeating the same mistake again and again, as the responsible person cannot meet the mistake with openness, reject its existence, or handle it because of lacking tools, knowledge, or an outdated thought form. Just think about that. But how can we be that dependent on each other and part of each other in the same wholeness, be independently thinking with different purposes in life and consequent needs and consciousness level, and still be able to interact with each other without having to settle, to compromise with ourselves, and not to be dependent on other people's confirmations? Social acceptance is part of our nature, but it must not only be our driving force and identity. Then we would have a challenge when big crises would hit us and demand from us that we have to make big changes which the present social system we are interacting in does not want or accept. This could be a divorce or downsizing in a workplace. The system that confirmed us suddenly rejects us and doesn't need us anymore. This is where we need a strong core to rest in and to navigate from, and which gives us peace and an overview. There are so many people talking about self-love, but how? What is this? How can it be defined? Self-love or self-consciousness. To me, self-love is about self-respect and self-consciousness with universal ethics and morals in mind, where we fulfill our needs without it costing anyone anything inappropriate or intentionally harming anyone. This is where we care for our positive ego with empathy and compassion for ourselves and others in the same spirit. When we treat other people as we would like to be treated ourselves. When we do not treat ourselves in a way, we would never be able to treat other people. When we set self-loving boundaries and respect other people's limits. Vulnerability is self-love. Patience ability is self-love. Self-love is when we feel ourselves are capable of defining our need and understanding our weaknesses and strengths with all of our positive and negative poles with peace and acceptance. When we feel being a happy person unconditionally of other people's confirmations, because we rest in ourselves, believe in us, accept us, and are proud of ourselves, then we are self-loving. When we dare to believe that we might make mistakes in order to develop ourselves, to consciously develop towards a more developed consciousness or the healthy ego. The brain twister. Success is the happiness we succeed in achieving success. What does not have a duality? And note, here we are talking in the present tense. Meta-duality theory can be practiced on only one condition. The disagreement of the opposite poles can meet in agreement only in a point where time ceases and there is only love and comprehension, nothingness. The moment time ceases from the past tense and onto the future tense, in an agreement in the present tense, Then the past tense ceases in the present tense, and a new time starts in the present tense. Therefore, the present tense has no duality loop of time. This is where condemnation and rejection do not exist. This is the key word for me. Self-love or self-consciousness is when the poles are able to meet in an agreement despite their disagreement. When one condition is changed into the condition of the opposite pole in agreement. When we stop judging others, then we stop judging ourselves. That is self-love. Here, one of the laws of the meta-duality theory takes effect, namely the law of consciousness, cause and effect. Because a cause has an effect, effects have consequences, consequences change circumstances, circumstances lead to experiences. From those experiences come changes, which bring about renewed energy, and that gives wisdom, which turns into its own cause, and the cycle starts again. When we alienate and judge others in the wrong and erroneous way, because we do not understand, and therefore meet them with resistance, reject them, then the law of consciousness, of cause and effect, will take effect. Thus, we shall meet the effect of a thought form where other people judge and alienate us in the wrong and erroneous way. Instead of finding the balance in the dualities, where we meet with the opposite pole in a common compromise, or we end up phasing out or finding a new way in the dualities. We need not judge anything. We choose off with resistance and rejection. We can simply meet it with the positive ego and self-love, self-consciousness. In the notes accompanying this audiobook, there is a diagram that explores this loop of time between the past tense and the future tense, which goes to a point zero. Time is linear and ceases in the present. The power of thoughts and the meta-duality theory. Those of you who believe in the power of thought, but lack a proof or a more concrete way to understand it, must know that then the law of consciousness is completed. Cause and effect, the law of the power of thought. What we think, we attract. Yes, but how does this relate to the fact that we should preferably formulate ourselves positively so as not to attract the negative? This is because the law of cause and effect comes into play here. It is the law of the effect of our basic existence. The power of thought is the effect of the cause of dualities, and vice versa. The brain twister. All kinds of energies and their output, combined with time, with its timing, creates patience ability. A thought without any action has no effect. Linear and circular thought forms. If all our million thoughts would turn into reality, then we'd be in trouble. The thoughts which create our circumstances, our reaction patterns, and our emotional signatures create our reality and thus an effect. This means our behavior is based on our thoughts in everyday life, and our feelings play a big role in what we act on. Remember that energy is when something has a purpose. If a thought has a purpose, then it is likely to have an effect in the form of an action or of being inactive. Not acting is also an action. Therefore, our thoughts and emotions are the alpha and the basis of the quality of life and the balance of our existence. our happiness, and the way we human beings act in the world. It is just a linear thought form with only one duality that may end up in a blockade in the energy, as I mentioned before. One of the emotions takes over and is unable to meet its duality in order to keep the balance. For example, a right or a wrong thought form which judges and rejects. This means that if we are stuck in a linear thought form, we can act only on the dominant feeling that caused the blockade, and then we are unable to act on other required thoughts and emotions. This stops our progress and development, and thus the action power which in a sustained way creates the energy flow. In order to dissolve and redeem the blockade, we need to activate the energy condition of the opposite pole into the condition which the emotional energy is blocked in. This is likely to create circular movement patterns, as this condition is going to activate all of the other 4 emotional conditions when moving. To be able to create a circulating effect, 2 duality axes must meet at a point in a crossfield. Thoughts and actions in an interaction with each other in the dualities in balance. Then we can create our own reality, get to know our manifestation ability, and use it to our advantage. We need all of our basic feelings, their effect, and thus their reaction patterns as an action, and thus the flow in the energy. Our fundamental feelings from which we work. Well, then, no emotional condition is wrong. It's just about the balance, and not only about feeling or thinking mostly in a certain condition for a longer period of time. Then the energy would lose its intensity and effectiveness. It would stall or move at a very low frequency. Here, we start from 4 basic feelings with cause, effect, and consequence, as well as a neutral condition with the predominant function of changing one condition to the other. Happy relates to passion and growth. Unhappy, failure and phasing out. Peace, success and balance. Anger, resistance and rejection. Vulnerability relates to motivation and change. It's okay to be angry and to reject. We need to phase things out when we are no longer angry, just as much as it is okay to love and to show love. And there we also need peace and balance. You just have to keep balance in the dualities so that we can keep the balance as human beings, and our compass may help us navigate from one condition to the other. From anger with rejection to peace with balance. From the concrete to the not concrete, when needed and required from us in the situations we find ourselves in. To be happy humans, we must learn to search so that we can navigate with our emotions and thoughts, and thus the abilities they may develop. In the notes accompanying this audiobook, there is also a diagram that depicts this interplay between the different emotions, being happy, unhappy, peace and anger, and vulnerability, all coming together in the present tense. Responsible criticism without judgment, the positive ego. As I point out an error, then I am rejecting your result for which you expect a recognition, as this is what we all do. We were born in the dualities, and from childhood we develop ourselves with praise and confirmation as the cause and effect. There may be many reasons to say no to an error or to point it out, demanding a change. To set boundaries because of an error that has a negative effect on others or something else. It may be a repetition of the same error. The error is so resource intensive to ourselves that we have to say no. It may be because the receiver is not good at receiving the criticism of the error, which makes cooperation very difficult. It may be that the error activates a part of us of which we do not yet have a clarification, or which we may be in a process of putting in place. The error may make us fall back into old patterns, which we were actually trying to change. The error may occur due to inattention because we are busy, or due to a lack of competence. We may also face an error being a fantastic learning to all parties. An error may occur if a collective consciousness tries to create balance inside itself, and in this way shows that there is something we must be aware of. The error may also occur due to bad behavior patterns. Some people are lazy or have no morals and ethics about what they deliver, and do something they are not passionate about or lack the personal resources for. Or the error may occur because of a pressure from the collective consciousness on the individual unit's inner change process, if they are unable to follow the optimization, the development, or the phase-out process. I could continue defining what errors may be, why they occur, and which consequences they may have. However, one thing is essential: you, and the way you handle an error. We cannot control how criticism is handed over, or what others say and think about the error we might have made, or whether others can accept the criticism, or can agree that they've made the error. However, we can evolve to take responsibility for ourselves and our patterns, our cause and effect for what we attract in life, that we do not reject our errors or judge other people's errors. If you are so absolutely certain that you have the right and enough knowledge to criticize or mock others, you should absolutely and certainly remember to apologize when you are not right.